Well, hello everyone. Welcome to this NVentures webinar, where we're going to be giving a roundup of recent exploration activity within the Asia Pacific region. So first of all, to introduce myself, I'm Rick Lever. I look after business development for the Asia Pacific region. And today's talk is going to be given by Jonathan Craig. Jonathan's our regional director. And the talk is based on a presentation he gave recently at the Image Convention in Houston. I will now hand over to Jonathan to begin the talk.
Thanks, Rick. Hi, before I start my presentation, I'd like to tell you a little bit about what we do at NVentures. We specialise in upstream intelligence in 6 regional areas, including coverage of deals, drilling activity, seismic acquisition, bid rounds and opportunities, all with detailed geotechnical analysis. We also manage the EarthMove GIS datasets, which cover global basin, asset and bid round analysis in multiple regions. All of our products are delivered online with simple, easy-to-use GIS tools. The latest EarthMove dataset to release was for East Mediterranean and North Africa. However, there are more in the pipeline. Over the course of my presentation, I'll give you a whistle-stop tour of an overview of the deals and awards in the region over the past 12 months or so. I'll cover bid round drive in some of the countries, some of the successes, and the areas where they've been lacking. I'll take a look back at recent exploration activity and highlight some of the major discoveries. I'll also review a selection of some of the interesting investment opportunities in the region, and then I'll finish up with a closer look at some of the exciting prospects planned for exploration. Deals in Indonesia and Malaysia have consisted of a mixture of new awards, farm-ins, or acquisitions. They've been mainly centred on mature areas in Sumatra, Indonesia, and throughout offshore Malaysia, Malay Peninsula, Sarawak and Sabah areas of Malaysia. However, in Malaysia, almost 70% of the deals have been new awards. Petronas has been very active in the region and is arguably the most successful international NOC in the world right now. Until recently, the main activity in Australia has been through a few minor reshuffles of interests in LNG projects on the Northwest Shelf or assets that have been changing hands by way of farm-ins and acquisitions. There have also been a few awards recently in Queensland. However, since late July, offshore awards have finally been made. Impex picked up a block in the Bonaparte Basin, and Chevron, Melbana and Woodside have each been awarded blocks off the Northwest Shelf. Meanwhile, south of the country, Beach was awarded a block in the Otway Basin off Victoria, including 2 production licenses. And ExxonMobil is believed to be expected to be awarded a block also off the southeast of Australia. However, in a somewhat baffling part of the announcement, there'll be no new seismic permitted. Only the use of existing data, which will be disappointing for lots of the seismic contractors. Meanwhile, Finder Energy recently announced the acquisition of ENI and Impex interests offshore Timor-Leste. The block in question has discovered low-risk oil resources that can move quickly to development. So it'll be interesting to see if this deal could spark further interest in the country, where PSC fiscal terms are good. In the past 15 months or so, there have been some notable changes to licenses. These have included ENI strengthening its position in the offshore Kutai Basin, East Kalimantan, initially completing the acquisition of Neptune, which had stakes in 4 blocks, and then by acquiring Chevron's share in 3 blocks following its exit from Indonesia. ENI is planning to establish a new gas hub following the 5 TCF Geng North discovery and still has a promising exploration target in the acreage to pursue, and it has 1 or 2 wells planned for next year. In Malaysia, TotalEnergies has gained a foothold in Sarawak, acquiring both the OMV and Sapura Energy interests in the Sapura OMV JV assets and consolidating its position in Sabah, where TotalEnergies operates the Tepat discovery and its partner in another block with PTEP. This is a significant move for Total, which also sees its first ever production in Malaysia. TotalEnergies, meanwhile, exited its mature asset in Brunei, which was actually a legacy of its takeover of Elf. Selling its interests to Hibiscus Petroleum, which has been expanding its footprint in the region. And further south, in southern Indonesia, Shell sold its share in the Inpex-operated Masada project to Petronas and Pertamina. The block contains the Abadi gas condensate project, which has stalled in recent years, and it's hoped it can begin to accelerate with FID planned next year and first class in 2030. Moving on to bid rounds, Malaysia and Indonesia have been very proactive in promoting regular license rounds and implementing new regulatory conditions, which have seen both countries attracting a steady flow of new awards over the past few years. Malaysia has been particularly successful, with much of its acreage now licensed. Its latest round, which closed yesterday, and then bid rounds in Malaysia have been a mix of exploration and development opportunities of clusters of undeveloped fields or fields with further upside. Indonesia has been holding regular bid rounds under improved terms since 2021. The country recently announced plans to offer up to 54 potential onshore and offshore blocks over the next 4 years, with half between 2024-26, mainly in Western Indonesia. The most recent bid round closed in September. Elsewhere, the Philippines also had a handful of blocks on offer, with the awards scheduled in November. These also included 2 blocks for natural hydrogen exploration. And Thailand's last bid round saw the award of 2 large exploration blocks to PTEP and 1 to Chevron in March 2023 in the Patani and Malay basins. While in Australia, bid rounds, particularly offshore, have dried up in recent years. The last bid round was launched in 2022 and closed in March 2023. Aside from rising costs, additional issues have been legal challenges and environmental activism. Just outside of Australia, another country that's seen very little activity acreage-wise has been Vietnam. A new petroleum law was amended in 2023, including longer PSCs, improved terms of special incentivized acreage, less overlapping issues, and more streamlined petroleum management. However, a bid round, which was expected over the last couple of years, still seems to be a way off, with bureaucracy holding up the process. Meanwhile, exploration has been relatively buoyant in the northern Asia Pacific, predominantly focused on mature basins such as Central and South Sumatra of Indonesia, where near-field activity continues to add incremental reserves. The other main area of drilling has been offshore Sarawak in Malaysia and to a lesser extent Sabah. Appraisal drilling continues offshore Thailand, and Vietnam has also seen a couple of wells drilled recently. Nevertheless, the major discoveries continue to be made with offshore drilling. In Australia, apart from drilling in the mature Cooper-Eromanga Basin and some success in the onshore Perth Basin, exploration drilling has been thin on the ground. Mentioned earlier, this has been exacerbated by the lack of bid round activity. Taking a closer look at offshore drilling, the active exploration drilling areas of Asia Pacific over 2023 and into the first half of 2024 have been dominated by Malaysia and to a lesser extent Indonesia. Malaysia has scored an impressive success rate around 50%, with Petronas claiming over 1 billion BOE of resources were discovered in 2023 from 19 wells. Indonesia also had over 50% hit rate, and there have been a few significant offshore gas discoveries, including BP's Kepi Kepi well in the Bintuni Basin, West Papua. Most have been near-field, unknown plays. However, a couple such as in the east of Java Basin were drilled by Petronas. However, these had tight hole status. In Vietnam, SK Earthon scored an oil and gas discovery, Hama Vang, and are now looking for partners. And Eni recently drilled a well with no results reported to date. Looking slightly ahead, Murphy have got 2 wells planned this quarter in Vietnam. Meanwhile, Australia has seen 3 wells drilled, but with disappointing results. However, Inpex did indicate on a web call last month that one of its wells near the Ichthys project had discovered hydrocarbons. The 2023 results in Malaysia avoid using new 3D seismic data, the majority of which have been offshore Sarawak and a handful off Sabah, with Petronas and PTEC drilling the lion's share of the wells. In the Malay Basin, Hibiscus Petroleum had a discovery with Bongo Lavitera, and PTEC found oil and gas with Simpa Beluda 1. Drilling continues this year at pace by Petronas, with 28 wells planned this year. This year also, Petronas has been actively drilling in the Malay Basin, with 4 wells drilled or ongoing, one of which, Beacock Deep, was recently announced as discovering a new play, which could open up the drilling in the basin. Petronas has also proved there's still potential in Malaysia's mature basins in areas where there were historically high CO2, which was obviously thought to be a problem. However, Petronas has found it's not as prolific and better understands the geology. Shell recently drilled a 3-well campaign in its mature MLNG block at Sarawak, and early in the year drilled an ultra-deep water well off Sabah, although results for this well are unreported. Another area of significance has been offshore North Sumatra, Indonesia. Following on from the 2022 play opener Timpan 1 by Harbour Energy, discoveries have continued over the past 12 months. Notwithstanding the disappointing Hull 1 well drilled by Harbour, Mubadala has continued the success with Layaran 1 and the recent Tangkulo 1 further south, with the new discoveries now accounting for an estimated 11 TCF in place gas resources. The latter 2 wells have de-risked other leads for Mubadala and a potential multi-field development. Mubadala recently announced the Layaran 2 appraisal and sidetrack was successful, firming up reserves at the field, and were also awarded PSC for the neighbouring Central Andaman blocks with Harbour as operator. And next year, Harbour is planning to return to Timpan with an appraisal well. Looking now to the future, with opportunities and new exploration, the recent bid rounds will help drive increased farming activity from those willing to fund drilling in emerging and advantaged acreage. There's currently around 160 farming opportunities in the region, and likely more that are not openly promoted. They cover both frontier or underexplored acreage, but also undeveloped and near-field resources. Here worth mentioning are in Malaysia, Seascape, which was recently renamed from Longboat, has a farm-out process well underway for Block 2A, which contains the much-anticipated Kertang prospect, where unrisked prospective resources around 9 TCF. Seascape actually hopes for a deal later this quarter. In Indonesia, West Sumatra offshore, Conrad Asia has acreage with over 200 BCF of discovered resources with further exploration potential. 3D seismic is planned west of Aceh later this year to delineate near-field, low-risk drilling opportunities as well as deep-water prospectivity, where several large structures have already been identified. In Papua New Guinea, Laris has finished seismic interpretation of its PPL 579 block and is expected to launch a data room and farm-out process this week. In Australia, Melbourne has acreage with several prospects, notably Hudson in the Bonaparte Basin, and is looking for a partner to fund 3D seismic prior to drilling. 2025 could see exploration turn a corner in Australia. EOG's Beehive 1 well in the Petrel sub-basin of the Bonaparte Basin. This prospect is mooted to be one of the largest undrilled structures in the country and could contain between 400 to over 1 billion BOE. In the North Carnarvon Basin on the Northwest Shelf, Chevron is targeting a deeper gas reservoir with Wheatstone Deep and will also look for dry gas with Dino South. Meanwhile, the Transocean Equinox semi-submersible is lined up to drill several wells next year in the waters south of Victoria in the Otway Basin. ConocoPhillips is currently planning a 2-well program with targets awaiting approval from the authorities. There are also potential for other wells to follow. The rig is also expected to drill wells for Cooper Energy, and Beach Energy is also weighing up 2 of its prospects notably Hercules and Mavis. And just outside Australia, in Timor-Leste, Sunder Energy plans to drill the Chudich 2 appraisal next year, targeting 1 TCF mean contingent resources gas. In frontier Papua New Guinea, TotalEnergies Melu 1 well, which is a multi-billion barrel prospect with major follow-up potential, is planned to be drilled in late 2025. The well is seen as a play opener in the offshore Papuan Plateau that will target giant carbonate structures in an isolated Eocene to Miocene carbonate reservoir deposited on pre-existing highs. Petronas is also currently in negotiations to acquire 50% interest in the project. Just to the north, Laris Energy has several world-class leads and prospects in the block, immediately north of TotalEnergies block. There are 7 prospects and 23 leads with up to 3.8 billion barrels of resource potential. The lead prospect, Nanamaropi, has around a billion barrels recoverable. And as I mentioned earlier, Laris is looking for a farm to operate the block, and with TotalEnergy planning the rig late 2025, it's expected that a well could be drilled on Nanamaropi in 2026. So to wrap up, there's a bright outlook in the region, but it could be better. Improved seismic and reprocessing has been a key aspect behind the successes. In Indonesia, BP completed seismic over its Agjong 1 and 2 blocks offshore East Java earlier this year and is expected to start working up leads with drilling potentially by 2026. TGS has been very active in the region, and recently announcing plans to acquire new seismic offshore Seram Island and has completed reprocessing offshore east of Java. There's been extensive 3D and reprocessing in Malaysian waters over recent years, and it's also continuing seismic off the Malay Peninsula. Malaysia has been very successful with its bid round. Should other countries follow suit? Thailand is planning an onshore bid round, the first since 2021 for 9 blocks, which was originally planned for this year, but it looks like more likely to start next year. However, is it missing a trick in the Andaman Sea north of the Indonesian discoveries? Perhaps there are blocks there that could be opened up in future, as most of the offshore areas are licensed in Thailand. Papua New Guinea is currently modifying the fiscal regime, switching from a concession to PSC terms, and intends to significantly increase the state take. Once ratified, a delayed bid round is due to follow. And in Australia, a sense of reality is finally hit, and there's some hope that things could start turning round. Could there be some more offshore blocks launched? There are several undeveloped projects where further investment is required. An example includes Lion Energy's East Seram block, which has both proven gas and several promising oil and gas leads. However, some of the better farm-ins are often not publicly advertised, or license have just simply expired before deals could be made, and have been so close to expiry that some firms give up. There's still several frontier underexplored areas, particularly around Indonesia, such as the Bubara block, recently awarded to Petronas in the Aru Trough, where a well is planned in 2026, and the East Natuna Basin, where activity is stagnated, but it still has significant potential. In onshore Papua New Guinea, ExxonMobil has also been working on up to 5 prospects for potential drilling in what is still relatively underexplored. And finally, above ground issues as ever play their part. The Philippines continues to be stifled by China's claims in the South China Sea with no resolution forthcoming. The New Zealand government recently announced plans to lift the offshore oil and gas exploration ban. Whether this has any significant effect, though, on interest in a new resource discovery remains to be seen. However, a bid round is rumoured in 2025. Talks between Cambodia and Thailand over the overlapping claims areas taking place this year. It has become one of the Thai government's urgent goals to boost its reserves. A joint development could be a good solution to develop the resources, which are likely to be some of the best undeveloped resources in the region, and where shared revenues could be around $300 to $500 billion. However, even if an agreement is made, it will be several years before the resources are exploited. Resolving these above ground issues will be one of the key factors to unlocking the significant untapped resources in the region. Okay, so just the questions. How many blocks? What are the blocks in Vietnam? There's rumored to be some blocks in the south in the Kulong and Nam Kon Song Basin. And there are also some underexplored areas in the Song Hong near the Savoy Jan field in central Vietnam. Onshore Thailand, the bid round for 9 blocks, I think 2 are further south to the west and the other 7 are in the northeast.
Okay, well, if there are no more questions at the moment, then thanks very much for that, Jonathan, and thank you everyone for attending. If you do have any sort of further questions, then you will see obviously my contact details are given on the screen. Now, for those over in Malaysia or planning to head there in November for the APGCE, I shall be there as well. So if you'd like to catch up, just drop me a line. More than happy to catch up, answer any questions. We can have a chat and a coffee. Likewise, you can just drop me a line if you'd like to set up a little Teams meeting as well. I'm available anytime to catch up.
Oh, Rick, I've just got one more question come in. What is the best estimate for timing of the Thai onshore licensing round? They had planned it to be this year. I guess potentially it could be this quarter. However, they tend to be relatively slow getting these things out, so it could slip into 2025. Sorry. Okay, Rick.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, I think that's all the questions there for now. Okay, thank you very much for attending, and yeah, we will speak again soon.